You cast your ballot, you made your voice heard. Now the results are in for the Illinois primary election. North Central College political science professor Stephen Caliendo joining us to break down the big races and kind of talk about what's next. Professor Caliendo, good to see you in person.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, okay, so what stood out to you? Any surprises from yesterday that jumped out at you?
Not a huge surprise. I think that the polls were tracking pretty well. We kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into by the time we got to Election Day. The big thing that I'd say it's a disappointment more than a surprise is that people didn't show up yesterday because we were tracking really well on voter turnout for early voting and for mail-in voting. But then people did that instead of going to the polls.
What do you think is behind that?
I don't know, but I mean, you know, typically off-year elections, you're going to have lower voter turnout than you have during elections where there's a presidential candidate on the ballot. But so much is happening in the world. People are feeling so much in terms of their economics. We're at war, et cetera. There were a bunch of open House races that we don't typically see, not to mention a governor's race and a Senate race. There was really no excuse for folks not to vote yesterday, so I was disappointed to see low voter turnout.
Talk about the Senate race. Okay, we have Juliana Stratton is going to be the Democratic nominee. Governor Pritzker threw his weight behind her. Any surprises there? Do you think that that was a difference maker for her?
If you would have asked me, well, and you did, a couple of weeks ago, yes, I think Raja, you know, because he had so much money, he had built up such a big war chest. He clearly looked like he was going. He got on the airwaves a lot faster than anybody else. But I think having early endorsement from Governor Pritzker and some of Governor Pritzker's money certainly helped Stratton get to where she ultimately got. I think it was clear in the last week or so that that's where things were going. But it was sort of a late push.
Okay. And in terms of their the rematch that's going to happen between Darren Bailey and Governor Pritzker, do you expect anything to be different in November than it was in 2022?
The outcome probably will be the same, but it is a different race. I mean, you know, in 2022, so much was focused on how Governor Pritzker responded during the pandemic. And so some folks really liked that he was aggressive and that he was a sort of a national leader in that regard. Other people didn't like that very much. That's not going to be part of the conversation now. It's been 4 years later. Terrible loss in the Bailey family, which, of course, a lot of folks feel a lot of sympathy for him. He connects with a lot of people, but I think, you know, it's not just the money. It's Governor Pritzker, as we saw yesterday with a couple of endorsements that he made. He didn't get into a lot, but when he did, it was powerful. Yeah. He's very popular, and so it's going to be very difficult to knock him off.
All right, these outgoing Congress people, Jan Schakowsky among them, Danny Davis among them. Any surprises in the Democratic primaries to replace them?
I wouldn't say surprises, but so let's start with the 7th with Danny Davis. You know, he sort of shoulder tapped LaShawn Ford and gave him the endorsement. A lot of times outgoing folks don't do that, but that was, and I think Melissa Conyers-Ervin was a very powerful candidate, a very strong candidate in a lot of different ways. I wonder if some folks in that district might have held it against her that she chose to run against Danny Davis before he was ready to retire. I'm talking about about 2 years ago, and so that may have had a little bit of an effect there. But again, when you get the endorsement from the incumbent, that's likely going to happen. In the 9th, that's where it's interesting. This is where Daniel Biss, the mayor of Evanston, beats Kat Agubazale, who really put on a really different type of campaign. It was really, she did a lot of community service. She did a lot of work directly in the community. But the knock on her was that she wasn't really from the district. She only lived there for a couple of years. And I think what I really want to take away from this is that there is a generational divide, particularly in the Democratic Party, about progressivism versus more sort of moderate Democratic politics. But I don't know that that race is a good barometer of it because she was such a unique candidate.
And she had a massive kind of social media following, right? Like it was kind of a generational difference in terms of the campaign approach. Yeah, and she had a pretty good term. I mean, she was a strong second in that race.
Strong second, and look, small money donors. She didn't take PAC money. She spoke very plainly, which again, I wonder, you know, Donald Trump got along very well by learning how to speak plainly, or he didn't have to learn it. He knew how to speak. That's the only way he knows how to speak. But she was really trying to talk to people in very clear terms, sometimes using curse words, etc., not doing typical political speak. So it'll be interesting to see if that catches on. In terms of policy perspectives, she's certainly in the very progressive camp, and there's definitely a generational divide happening in the Democratic Party with respect to that.
Professor Caliendo, thanks for being here. Appreciate it, sir.
It's great to see you.
Yeah.